Secret of the Mimic has finally released after months of teasing, and finally we get to see what all the fuss was about for this game. And let me tell you, it changes everything. From the true origins of Fredbear and gang to finally solving the infamous book debate. So much so that I have to drop my Fnaf 4 theory again just to make a theory on this game-changing piece of lore. So in this video, we will be going over everything that this game's lore changes, which ending is a true one, and what it means for the future, both literally and figuratively, of Five Nights at Freddy's. So with that being said, let's get into it. Now, this game is a little bit different from Security Breach and Ruin, where in those games, they have a lot of environmental storytelling. But in this game, the lore can be explained just by explaining all of the characters. There's not much in the environment of the game itself, aside from the normal dates and whatnot. So for this video, I will be going from major character to character and explaining them all. Of course, as always, major spoilers for the game ahead, obviously. But before we get into the characters, we should go straight into the very first seconds of the game, because right off the bat, the game already confirms two aspects of the lore. One that we've already theorized about and one that we wanted to know. First, see this little guy here? Yep, that is a springbonnie bobblehead, which would more or less have to come from Fredbear's family diner, meaning this game does indeed take place when this restaurant is happening. Not exactly new news, I know, but if anybody had any doubt, refer them to this. The other aspect that this game confirms right off the bat is who we play as. Now, before this game released, we theorized it was either one of two characters, Henry Emily or William Afton, and the evidence was all there. The trailers already confirmed we won't be playing as Edwin, and based on what they told us, in order to get into this factory, we would need to have high mechanical and technical skills, which all fits in with both Henry and William. Henry making the original animatronics, and William creating the fun times. This would be further proved by the fact that this guy is going in alone, when we learn from the books that Fazbear Entertainment already sent groups of people before they all died, which is confirmed very early in the game, as we can see animal suits with limbs hanging out of them that say Group 12. But I said would be further proved. All of this crumbles down when Dispatch, who was seemingly the voice that Hand Unit was based off of, literally name drops him in the first two words. Arnold, hey. First of all, a complete missed opportunity to reference by go, hey Arnold. And second of all, that was a big letdown. But don't beat yourself up about it. Not only was it very unlikely that we would be playing as Henry Emily and William Afton of all people, they do show up some way later on in the game. So keep that in mind. So who exactly is Arnold? Well, for now at least, it looks like he's just a poor mistreated Fazbear technician that ended up being at the wrong place, wrong time. But with Arnold being explained, we should probably take a look at the guy who caused all of this. Dispatch. At first, he just seems like an obviously corrupted Fazbear Entertainment higher-up who ignores any talk about the treatment of the employees and tries to gaslight them into thinking that they are doing it willingly for $25. And, like I mentioned, was very clearly the base of the voice for Hand Unit. That's about it. At the end of the game, we discovered that when we get to Murray's costume manor, the dispatch that was talking to us was actually the mimic, or a mimic. I'm pretty sure we can actually tell when this guy is replaced too. After one of the most badass chase scenes of Fnaf with Jackie, who we never then see again because Stewart doesn't know how to stop hyping characters to only then never give them relevance again, whenever we try to talk to the patch, this happens.
Awesome.
And then, just before he finishes his lines, he starts to talk kinda weird.
I found the location of another upgrade station in the showrooms. You can get there if you head back through the welcome show. That's the room where you entered the building.
And finally, when we leave the manor, Dispatch just goes back to his usual corrupted businessman self and leaves us to go on to explain the next major character. I should not explain the mimic yet, or mimics. Edwin and his family. But let's start with Edwin. However, this is where things start to get wild, so bear with me and try not to let your head explode. This is Edwin's manor, obviously, and he got this from his father, who sadly died. Throughout the game, we learned that the purpose of this manor is to make and sell costumes, or at least that was his original purpose, as we learned that Edwin actually wants to expand the business, making his own inventions and even his own animatronics.
Maybe rebrand? We could start making some of my inventions for real.
But he still designed costumes as well, some of which we already know and love. Roxy, Music Man, and then Foxy. Foxy wasn't an animatronic yet, however, he was just a puppet, but he most likely created the character Foxy, or is commissioned to. Now, the other characters Edwin made, Music Man, or Big Top. Not much to explain here, just a guy who takes tickets, and I think his character might have been stolen by William Afton, which I predicted in one of my shorts, and turned him into Music Man. As for Roxy, it's a little bit interesting, as she was made to entertain David when he was a baby. Of Of course, David didn't like it, so Edwin probably just took the puppet and reused it for the Foxy show. Oh yeah, Foxy. Well, like I said, he's just a puppet at the moment, but it seems like he was made for the Foxy show, or pirate show, whatever. It's a show about pirates, and this is probably where Foxy first appears. So Edwin made all of these characters, but he may have made more. However, that will be getting into too much too early, as Edwin's story still isn't finished. While Edwin was expanding his business, we learned that he started dating one of his employees. No, not like that. Someone called Fiona. This is revealed by a secret recording.
And you're also really pretty, like asymmetrical pretty.
After that, we can assume that he got married and then had a kid named David. He wasn't really there for David, revealed in the tape at the end of the game.
You're missing the party. Next year will be even better.
And it seems like he barely saw Fiona, as well as he was rushing his work and staying up for long hours.
One of my costumers, Vic, nearly lost his hand today. You're busy, but you can't rush these things.
Apart from that, things seemed to be going great until some tragic things happened. The death of his wife. This really bumped him out.
I miss you. I miss you more than you'll ever know.
So now he was left with an expanding business and nobody to take care of his son. So what does he do? He creates a mimicking robot named N1 to take care of him, of course. More details on the robot later, as I don't want things to be too confusing. This is where things take a really surreal and dark turn, as it's revealed in one of the ending tapes that the robot was not only taking care of David, is acting like Fiona as well.
I baked it myself for David's special day.
Great job.
This might have been possible because it's revealed that he learned to talk to Fiona via some radio waves.
This is where I heard it. It's her or someone that sounds like her. Set frequency to 4625.
So maybe she possessed the endo? So things are fine now, I guess? This ends up confusing some of the employees at the manor. Quote, I heard Fiona's voice, why is he lying to us? And apart from that, and then David dies. Not only did this leave Edwin in peril, this also left the Fiona mimic N1 sad as well, as she wants him to make a David mimic the same as he did with Fiona. So he moves Fiona M1 out of the mimic endoskeleton and into somewhere else, and creates a new program called M2 to try and make David. However, this doesn't quite work. Details on that later, but eventually after shutting down parts of the manor, quote, while returning down work, now he wants to shut the whole thing down. He just sits in his office talking to that thing, and failing more and more.
Every copy has failed. I don't even know why it worked the first time.
He ends up beating M2.
Stop. You're not him. You're not. Stop sounding like him.
And this presumably taught it violence, as revealed in another log. Quote, again, M2 can no longer be controlled. It would no longer listen. It mimics rage. After that, while it's not exactly stated, we can assume that he closed down the manor for good, possibly to keep working on M2. But as revealed in one last recording, he either dies or goes missing. And then that's about it for Edwin. But did he really die, or is he just missing like I just said? We don't exactly see his body, and in the books, he does end up alive, trapped somewhere in the mega pizzaplex or something like that. I'm not really sure. I haven't exactly read them, but I do know that he's alive at the time period of security breach. I think he's alive. If they wanted to show us that he is dead, they would have probably given us more of an answer, but more on this later, because that's about it for Edwin. Or so you thought. You see, I left out something about the characters Edwin created. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Fredbear, Springbonnie, and the original Freddy fazbear gang. And this, my friends, might have changed everything we know about the origin of these characters. In one of the recordings, Edwin talks about a fazbear project.
I just need to finish the new fazbear project, and then everyone will come back. We can get back to normal.
And in one of the endings with the weird recreation of the Fnaf 1 restaurant, we can see the fazbear animatronics that say property of MCN. So wait a minute, does this mean Edwin made Freddy in the game? Was it not Henry? But wait, there's still more. When playing through the ending, we can see two very important figures in all of Fnaf, a golden Bonnie springlock suit, and finally a springlock Fredbear. This, my friends, is completely different than what we previously thought. We thought Freddy in the game was more or less made by Henry, and that at least Springbonnie was made by William Afton. So does this mean that we were all wrong? Was it a big old retcon? Well, not exactly. Take a listen at one of Edwin's recordings.
Aren't they insane? The look of these new animatronics is Fiona's design, and they're great. Now they changed their minds when we're so close to final. The new concepts are frankly creepy. I'm not changing a single bit of her work, and they can't make me.
Fiona pitched Fazbear Entertainment designs, but they rejected them. However, Edwin didn't care, he continued to make them. But he did say that the new concepts are creepy, and we know that these animatronics were not used in the first Freddy's location. The animatronics used were the withered animatronics from Fnaf 2, except unwithered. And in that game, Phone Guy even says himself that they are creepy. So what happened? Well, Fiona pitched some designs, Fazbear rejected them, Edwin, out of spite, still made them, but presumably went missing before he could finish them, and Fazbear Entertainment decided to go with the other designs. And these designs were probably made by Henry and William, or maybe just Henry. But what about the Fredbears designs? Well, it's most likely just the same thing. William and Henry commissioned Edwin to make these animatronics, but when he went missing, they decided to go with their own designs. That's why the springbonnie we actually know looks so different to the one in game. To sum it all up, what we previously thought, the theory that Henry made the original animatronics as Fredbear and that William made springbonnie, has a little bit more to it. Edwin also helped in the making of them, or at least the animatronics we see in Fnaf 1. So Edwin made or helped make a lot of the original characters we see, and then he unfortunately went missing. Now, that's really it for Edwin, more or less. Edwin obtained his father's manor, expanded it, got himself a wife and kid, created and helped create a bunch of characters we know and love, but then his wife died, leaving him alone with the kid he doesn't have time for, and then he created a robot to take care of said kid, but that robot ended up mimicking / being possessed by Fiona, aka M1, but then the kid died. Fiona wanted Edwin to make a mimic that was David, aka M2, but it didn't work. Edwin got mad at M2, beat it, but then it came back to bite him in the butt, and he's now either dead or missing and in hiding somewhere. That's his story, more or less. But what about the others, Fiona and David? Let's explain Fiona first. At first, she was in a play at the manor, but feelings happened, like I mentioned, and then presumably they got married. She ends up helping Edwin with a lot of stuff from Murray's costume manor. First, it was voicing Miss Helpful, revealed by recording between her and Edwin.
Excuse me, can I borrow your voice for a project?
And I would be delighted to help. What kind of voice should I do?
And then it was voicing repair tapes for the elevator, also revealed in a recording.
Can you make a quick instructional tape telling staff how to fix it? Love you.
But then she gets a massive upgrade and starts designing actual costumes for MCM. And one of the most notable ones was finally Chica's party road, revealed in a log. Quote, Fiona is amazing. The client is very happy with their chicken designs. Their sales are through the roof. So it seems like Fiona designs the characters and Edwin makes the costumes. Oh yeah, that's right. Chica's party road. Now let's get off topic of explaining Fiona for a bit, as Chica's party road is some of the only bit of environmental storytelling we get from this game. And I'm not just gonna gloss over an almost decade-old mystery restaurant. After years of it being teased in a sister location teaser and then we never hear of it again, it's finally here. Except, it's crashing. But we still know that it has to still be open by the time of system location, as the source code for its original reveal also revealed that Funtime Chica is currently being rented there, which is why we don't actually see her here. This might mess up the timeline a bit, however, as it's theorized that system location is either after Fnaf 1 or sometime before Fnaf 2, and it's crashing now, so it's hard to believe it would stay in business for like 30 years into the first game. But I'm not here for that. Let's just say that Chica's party road is finally here. We finally have closure. Now let's get back on topic to Fiona. Are there any other notable characters Fiona has made? Well, there are actually. Want to take a guess? It's the mediocre melodies. This is actually pretty interesting too. You see, in one of the logs, a guy named Stan says that it's time to jump ship and that I have a bunch of Fiona's characters patterns and we can start our own machine shop. What was this shop? Well, it might be Stan's budget tech from Pizzeria Simulator. That's right, some guy named Stan might have stolen the mediocre melodies designs from Fiona and used them to sell profit. Anyways, so Fiona helps Edwin design characters, voices Mrs. Helpful, and makes repair tapes for things around the manor. Sometime during all of this, we can assume that she has David, whom she ends up taking care of the most, as she does try to get Edwin to spend more time with him.
Edwin! Ed! Get out here! You're missing us!
But it kinda doesn't work. After David, she ends up going to help with Fall Fest, which we don't exactly see in game, but she went to it, revealed in a recording.
I have to go help the Fall Fest crew, just for a few days until the installation is finished. I just have this terrible feeling like I need to be there so nothing goes wrong, just in case.
This, sadly, is where she died, and we know this because a recording from Edwin says this.
Oh, how am I supposed to tell David that his mother is gone? How am I supposed to raise a kid on my own?
How did she die? Well, a fire, maybe. It's teased very heavily in Help Wanted 2 that something bad happened at Fall Fest, and that might have been a fire, so I think it's safe to say that Fiona's death was caused by fire from Fall Fest. However, that might not be all for Fiona, as like I said, she might have went on to possess M1. You see, after Fiona dies and Edwin makes M1 to take care of Edwin, Edwin discovers that he could talk to Fiona via radio waves, like I already mentioned. But this is where things get kinda iffy, because how exactly do radio waves matter with this? And Fiona died all the way at Fall small fest. How could she possess M1? Granted, the evidence is there. Maybe Edwin experimented with the radio waves enough and allowed Fiona to pass through into M1, and M1 is acting strangely like Fiona, so it's not that far-fetched. But this feels like we need something else to truly solve this, and we do. David solves this, but I'll get to him in a second. Let's finish with Fiona first. Whether M1 is just a mimic of Fiona or Fiona possessing the mimic, let's just continue her story from here. So Fiona, aka M1, presumably just resides in the Murray house and doesn't go out anywhere, but apart from that, everything else seems fine. But then David tragically dies, and M1, being a mimic of Fiona, or literally is Fiona, starts grieving and asks Edwin to recreate David in a mimic form, like we've already mentioned. Now things get iffy here as well, as it's unclear whether or not M1 was removed from the endoskeleton in replacement of M2, or M2 is a whole nother endo. But whatever it is, we know that she ends up in a machine, conveniently called Fiona. This is where Fiona keeps bugging on Edwin to recreate David, but something else comes up. It's unclear whether this is after Edwin goes missing, but Fiona ends up trying to compromise with him by giving him something. Quote, "We need to stop it together. Here are the blueprints for a cradle. It can keep David safe and provide boundaries. If you don't finish the program, consider building the cradle." First of all, what is this cradle? Taking it at face value, it seems like it's there to keep the mimic safe. However, I think the answer has already been shown to us. The cradle is Mixes. You see, in Ruin, Mixes is the program keeping the mimic at bay, or looking at it from another point of view, keeping it safe. And with the cradle being a blueprint presumably made by Fiona, of course it would look the same. So what if someone got a hold of these blueprints and used it to hold the mimic by the time of Ruin? But that leaves the question, who was it? Was it Edwin, Henry, Gregory, and Vanessa? Well, I'm willing to bet it's Gregory and Vanessa. In the Ruin DLC ending, Gregory explains how the Mixes system was designed to keep the mimic hidden. He talks about it in great detail too, almost as if he made it. So the people that found the cradle blueprints might have been Gregory and Vanessa, and it makes sense because they would be one of the few people that would know that the mimic exists. So that's about it for the cradle. What about what's next for Fiona? Well, after Fiona gives Edwin the cradle blueprint, that's when Arnold comes to MCM, and Arnold's goal is to get the mimic blueprints for fazbear Entertainment. But Fiona wants Arnold to give her the blueprints, probably to help fix M2. So she mimics Dispatch and tries to trick Arnold into giving her the mimic blueprints. Now, depending on which ending is the true one, she either gets it, or fixes the mimic. More on that later, but that was her main goal, to get the mimic blueprints. And so that's it for Fiona. Thank you for sticking with me, but I need to tell you something. If you haven't already known, I said in my last video, if I reach 1 million subscribers, I will somehow get into a call with Scott Cawthon to convince him to make an IRL mega pizzaplex. It may not even be possible to create one, but hey, at least I tried. I also said that if I hit 1,000 followers on my Twitch, I will be doing a giveaway to 5 people for something Fnaf related. So subscribe, follow the Twitch, and join the Discord below for more information. But now let's get back into it, because there is a whole lot more going on here, specifically with someone I barely talked about, David. David's story is kinda simple. He was born, obviously, he lost his mom, and then got babysitted by M1, but then he died, presumably losing his ball and got run over by a car. And that's about it, is what I would say if we didn't see his spirit in game. About 1 or 2 times in a playthrough, a white tiger costume would spawn and tease us a little before going away. And as we all know, the white tiger was David's favorite toy. There's also the fact that when this guy appears, kid noises can be heard.
By shooting targets to progress the story.
And to top it all off, this guy teleports in and out of places, which we can mostly see at the end when we go into tunnels. This guy is obviously paranormal, and with the very clear evidence, we can say that the white tiger is David's spirit haunting Murray's costume maker. And this is where things take a turn, because David himself might solve why the M2, the current mimic, did not work. You see, what if the reason why M1 worked was because Fiona really possessed it instead of the mimic just mimicking her? And this would carry over to M2, but David is already possessing something, the tiger rock suit. So he wouldn't be there to possess M2, therefore making it fail. And that's it. David was born, played with the mimic, died, and started haunting Murray's costume maker. We don't exactly take him down as we do with the other characters. We sort of just run away from him in the tunnels. We don't give him closure or anything. We just run, and that's about it. So I think it's safe to say that he's gonna come back. Arnold, Dispatch, Edwin, Fiona, and now David have all been explained. Now, before we get into the mimic, there's someone else here, another spirit, and I bet you didn't think much of him. The secret character we can encounter is Sleepy Moon. In the game, I think after we beat the game normally, we can come across a section where the only threat is a glowy moon guy. The mimic? It can't be. Its voice is too smooth. and you can't hear any of the servos and machinery moving around. To further prove this, some logs state that it was trapped by the workers, and the mimic wasn't trapped to begin with. And finally, if you take a look at the blueprints, it wasn't designed for an endoskeleton, only for a human. This can't be David either, as it acts completely different, and David seems to be bound in the tiger walk form. So who the f is this? Well, one of the logs might have given us an answer. In this section, we can find a log from a person on the night shift, and it says this, quote, "I'm stuck down here. The elevator isn't working and I'm getting really hungry. Someone was stuck down here, but we don't see a body anywhere, except wait, it was only designed for a human. There was a human trapped down here. We never found that human's body. Ladies and gentlemen, Sleepy Moon is possessed by the night guard. I'm willing to bet the guard frantically went inside the moon costume as a desperate attempt to do something to get out, but unfortunately he died inside the suit and now he possesses it. So Edwin and family, Arnold, Dispatch, and Sleepy Moon have all been explained. You might think that what's next is the mimic. However, not quite. Two more people are here, Henry and William Afton. Thankfully, their inclusion in this game is pretty simple, but while they don't show up physically, it does give us some insight into their characters. First is William Afton, revealed in 2 logs. Quote, "We are almost there. I need the rest of the Murray staff contact info. The sooner the better. You get that for me and I can sweeten the deal. How would you like to manage one of the new franchise locations? Signed by WA." And then software development in the entire MCN catalog. "We would love to keep you as a lead engineer. Although we now technically own the land, we would never touch the house your parents built. We feel this offer has been more than fair considering how far behind you are. It's just too much for you to handle alone. We are waiting for your response. Signed again by WA." For the first log, he's obviously talking to Henry. What other new franchise location could he be talking about if he's not talking about Fredbear's Family Diner? Also in the log, I can feel manipulation going. William Afton's friendship with Henry was very manipulative. He's tricking him into giving him what he wants. The last log is, I guess, him buying out MCM and Edwin's land. Overall, what these logs mean is basically William Afton taking control of everything. MCM, new franchise locations, and even Edwin's house. As for Henry, as I just told you, he's already in the logs, but Edwin does name drop him in a recording.
I got the change order from Hen last night.
Henry is revealed to be a worker at the manor, but as you know with William, he ends up managing Fredbear's Diner. And that's about it. Henry and maybe William Afton were workers at Murray's Costume Manor. They commissioned Edwin to make some prototypes for the Freddy gang and Fredbear gang, but then Edwin started going down and eventually missing, and then they just decided to finish what he made and went on to manage Freddys and Fredbear's Family Diner. And now finally on to the mimic. Thankfully, I kinda already explained his full story. He was made after Fiona died, and one, as a babysitter for David, got possessed by Fiona, started grieving when David died, and asked for Edwin to recreate him via a mimic program.
Edwin, you can't put it off any longer. You need to try again.
So now the mimic and the skeleton is actually M2, but M2 isn't working, so Edwin got mad, poured his rage into him until he became a killing machine with no reasoning, and is now loose inside the manor. And that's really it. That's his story, not counting security breach and ruin. But that's not all. We still have the endings to get into, but something important still needs to be said. One last thing, really, and what is it? Well, the books. I'm just gonna go right out and say it. I am glad to announce with 99% certainty that Tales of the Pizzaplex has been confirmed to be non-canon to the game's continuity. I repeat, Tales Games, the theory that Tales of the Pizzaplex and fazbear Frights is canon to the games has been completely debunked. No more weird Eleanor stories, no more revealing the lore before the games, and what I'm most excited for is the possibility of no more Andrew. But how? Well, it all has to do with one little detail. In Tales of the Pizzaplex, Fiona dies during the birth of David, something important to the book's plot. But as we already know, in Secret of the Mimic, Fiona survives the birth of David and even goes on to live for 3 more years, until her death at Fall Fest. Ladies and gentlemen, this one single detail separates the books from the games, and finally ends one of the most toxic and annoying debates of all time, the books. Now, the books are still important, yes, but at least we can finally say that they are not canon. With this celebration, we need to get into the last part of Secret of the Mimic, and the most confusing. This thing had me stumped for a while. Which one of the endings is the true end? In the basic ending where we get the data driver with the mimic program to Fiona, we go into our van where Dispatch reveals that he's been trying to get a hold of us all night. But before we could talk more, the mimic actually followed us in the van and then kills us. And then we spawn in the Fnaf 1 replica seemingly stuffed inside of Freddy. In the other ending, we don't give the data driver to Fiona and instead find another way out via the Fnaf 1 replica, where we then seemingly kill the mimic in a giant pool of lava and then escape. But while we did leave with the driver, the mimic turns out fine, like completely fine, no burns, he's completely fine. He crashes our van and then we think he's gonna kill us, but then he just grabs the data driver. But that's what Fiona wanted. The mimic was trying to kill us all game, but now he just wants the driver. In the final ending, we sort of fixed the mimic with the story. We did what Fiona wanted us to, and the mimic possibly ends up turning into David and going to sleep, presumably shutting down forever. Now right off the bat, we can say that the last ending isn't the canon one. Not only do we have to complete the game first to get it, we literally fixed the mimic, something that is obviously not the case in Security Breach and Ruin. As for the first ending, I'm inclined to say that it's not the true ending. My evidence lies within the second ending being the true one. But how does that ending make sense? Why didn't the mimic kill us? Why does he want the data driver all of a sudden? How is he completely fine after being dropped in a vat of lava? Well, this isn't the mimic, it's Fiona. Let me explain. Earlier, I brought up the fact that it's not really clear if M2 was made in its own endoskeleton or just replaced M1. But if you do say that they have their own endoskeleton, things start making more sense. First off, in Edwin's disappearance recording, the mimic says this.
You know, speaking of legs, what do you think? I just finished mine. There are still a few kinks to work out.
This either means he upgraded his legs for some reason, or that he didn't have legs to begin with. Why? Because this is a new endo, it's not M1, it's not finished. This would explain why the mimic we see in the ending didn't kill us and wants the data driver all of a sudden, and why it doesn't look like the lava affected it at all. Because this is Fiona, not the mimic that was chasing us all game. But if she did have her own endo, why not use it to get the data driver herself? Well, what if it was because it was trapped somewhere? When she was moved, she couldn't access it. But when we leave and the building starts collapsing, it was freed. She could access it now, and she used it to chase our van. There's also something else that fits perfectly with this. You know the theory that the mega pizzaplex was built on top of fredbears? That was why we kept seeing fredbear imagery in old carnival costumes. But it didn't explain why fredbears exactly had the carnival costumes, nor did it explain what exactly the mimic was doing there. Yes, in the books it's explained that the mimic was shipped to the pizzaplex, but nothing actually says that in Security Breach, apart from some vague sticky notes that could easily be talking about something else in a mall that presumably gets a lot of shipments. It also did not explain why the area was so big and why there's an elevator going straight down. But what if I told you that instead of fredbears, the mega pizzaplex was built on top of Murray's costume manor? It would explain all of this. It would explain why we see the carnival costumes, why we keep seeing fredbears imagery, why the place is so big, why there's an elevator going straight down. It would also explain how the mimic is here, M2. He could have survived the lava pit and rebuilt himself. That's why he looks so different in Ruin. But even if he survived, he is still trapped. Well, what about Mixes? Is it Mixes Fiona? Well, no. Mixes might have been based off of Fiona, but it's not her. If so, Fiona would have tried to give Edwin a program instead of blueprints. This is probably why they introduced two new threats and never resolved them, David and Sleepy Moon. If the mall wasn't on top of the manor, there would be little reason for us in the next game to go back to the manor, therefore making these spirits useless and just unresolved characters. This would explain why the ending, which I believe to be the true ending, is so confusing because we have it all wrong. This isn't M2. He's still trapped in the manor. That's why it didn't kill us and grabbed the data driver instead, because that's Fiona and that's what it wanted the entire game. Where did she go after? Likely back to the manor with the driver to try and fix M2 to beat David. And what happens after that will presumably be explained in the next game. So let's summarize everything from a timeline standpoint. Mr. Murray, Edwin's father, owned Murray's costume manor, and when his unfortunate passing happened, he handed over his franchise over to Edwin. During this, Edwin meets a girl, one of his employees, Fiona. He then falls in love with her, with Fiona feeling the same, and they eventually get married and have a kid named David. During this, Edwin decides to expand his father's franchise, expanding into Chica's Party World, getting into the show business, making deals with Fazbear Entertainment, and providing tech for a festival called the Fall Fest. However, during this, Fiona feels the need to go to the Fall Fest, but during her time there, something tragic happens, presumably a fire, and then she dies, leaving Edwin alone with the kid he doesn't have time to take care of because of all the new expansions he made. So he decides to do something to occupy David. He made a robot, M1, to babysit him and entertain him. During this time, however, he starts experimenting with radio waves, and he finds that he can talk to Fiona, and somehow, some way, this allows Fiona to pass over to possess M1, the robot taking care of David, and now becomes Fiona. Fiona warns Edwin that he must keep this a secret and that people wouldn't understand. Everything now seems all fine and dandy until, tragically, David dies, presumably ran over by a car. This not only leaves Edwin in peril, M1, aka Fiona, feels sad as well. She urges Edwin to then do the same thing he did with her, create David via a mimic robot, and he tried. He made a new mimic program called M2. Sometime during this, he removes M1 Fiona from her endoskeleton and into a machine called Fiona, and the original endoskeleton is put up somewhere. During this time, the company starts failing. He can't get work done in time and is behind on everything. One one notable person takes notice of this, William Afton, who then begins to plan on taking over Edwin's possession and have him work for William. He gets Henry, an employee at the manor, in on this plan, and promises to have him manage one of the new franchise locations that will come out of this, Fredbear's Family Diner. Meanwhile, Edwin is still working on M2, but it's not working. For some reason, he couldn't get M2 to replicate what happened to M1. The reason being because David isn't there to possess M2 like how Fiona was there to possess M1. He was already possessing a Tiger Rock suit, the mascot of his favorite toy. However, Fiona keeps pushing him on. She wants him to fix M2, to fix David. He then gets angry at it. It's mimicking David, but it's not David, and he ends up pouring his rage and anger into it, where it learns violence. Some of his employees notice something is off and they want out. They decide to steal some of Fiona's character designs and make their own company, Stan's Budget Tech, where they then sell animatronic versions of these characters. Others are experiencing their own case of the paranormal. One night, a night guard gets trapped in a hidden section of the manor. He tries to reach out, but nobody heard him. And in a desperate attempt to try to do something to get out, he went inside a moon costume he found in it, but then he tragically died in it, going on to possess it, where it is then trapped by other employees. Back to Edwin, William Afton, presumably a representative at fazbear Entertainment at this point, now owns everything on Edwin's land and closed down the manor. But Edwin was too busy to worry about that, because M2, fed with nothing but violence, anger, and snippets of David, turned on Edwin. Edwin is then either killed or runs away and goes missing. But M1 doesn't realize that. She thinks Edwin is ignoring her. In an attempt to compromise, she gives him blueprints to a cradle of some sort that will keep the mimic safe if he decides to not fix David. But Edwin doesn't get it. M2 is now loose inside the manor. William, or fazbear Entertainment, wants whatever program made the mimic, so they send in groups to get it. But the mimic won't allow that. He kills all of them, and eventually fazbear Entertainment sends in a technician named Arnold. Fiona learns of this and takes over dispatch from the manor and guides Arnold to get all the data driver upgrades and get the mimic's blueprints, because she wants to use it to finally fix David. But Arnold wasn't having it. Fiona blocked any way of him leaving instead of one place, a hidden program that led him to a prototype's Freddy's pizzeria. He uses this to find a new way out, but the mimic still wants him. It's never going to let him leave. Eventually, he stops it. The mimic fell to a giant pool of lava, and Arnold finds a way out, into the van and on his way home. Fiona wasn't gonna let this pass over. She wants that data driver. She wants to fix David. During the crumbling of the building, her original endoskeleton is set free and proceeds to chase after Arnold. She crashes his van and takes the data driver, leaving Arnold there to either die or for him to miraculously survive. She heads back into the manor to try and fix M2, while M2 survived the lava pit and is now rebuilding itself. Years and years pass by, and a new restaurant is built on top of where the manor used to be, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, used to trap a now spring-chopped William and end him once and for all. And then more years come by, and now a mega pizzaplex is built over the manor and pizzeria. Gregory then comes into play, and the mimic tries to get him for some reason, but he fails, and the mall crumbles down. Gregory and Vanessa realize what's down there, so they come across Fiona's cradle blueprints and make mixes, a security program designed to keep the mimic trapped. But then the mimic finds a walkie-talkie Cassidy and Gregory used to play with. He uses it to trick Cassidy into going into the now ruined pizzaplex and down into where he is trapped and frees him. Cassidy is now running for her life and finds herself in an elevator going straight down and down into the ruined Murray's costume manor, where she would now have to fight not only the mimic, but Fiona, Sleeping Moon, and finally David. And with that, my friends, is the secret of the mimic. The secret of the mimic was probably just his backstory. It might have broken some things with the origin with Freddy and the gang and even the book debate, but thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you later.